So this is the beginning position of the Nimzo-Indian defense, and I will teach you how to play this opening without needing to learn any theory. So we got here after the moves d4, then we play knight f6 as black, and the only thing you need to remember is that we want to stop white from playing the move pawn to e4. So we're playing knight f6, they will usually play c4, e6, and then they will play knight c3, simply because they want to try and push this pawn. So every move we make is going to be centered around stopping this for as long as we can, and then there are some other tricks as well. So the first move here is to play bishop b4 because we are going to pin the knight, and now that the knight is pinned, it is no longer protecting this, so of course if white pushes, you will just be able to capture this. And then here I'm going to take a look at the bishop d2 line, but there are a couple of other options as well, for example queen c2, a3, and I'm going to take a look at them in this video as well. But first we are going to check out bishop d2. So this relieves the pin because now the knight is free to move. So there are a couple of things you can do here. The first move I would recommend is d5. d5 is always a really good move in these positions just because it reinforces your grip on this e4 square even more. And even if white captures, of course, we get a new pawn here and we still have this pawn on d5. So white is going to play e3 so that they can play the bishop here or even the queen here in the future because they really want to push this e4 pawn. Black and castle here. And at any point you always have to check, can white play this or not, and you have to do everything in your power to stop this. So here, for example, a good move would be to capture the knight so that the knight is now gone and it's one less piece that's defending this pawn. Or you could also always do this fun trick, which is capturing here on c4, because now white wasted the move. First they move the bishop here, and then you force them to move the bishop here, and now also the bishop is no longer protecting this, so you did gain a little bit of time to further strengthen your grip. But I'm just going to show you the variation here with taking the knight. And usually you also play b6 here in these variations, just b6, because we want to put the bishop on b7, and then this will also help support the e4 square. So for example, knight f3, bishop here, castles. And again, you always have to take a look, can white push this? Here he cannot push it, of course, because we have way too many pieces. So we are going to play knight e7, which is the good developing move. You don't want to put it here, otherwise you are blocking your own bishop. So we are playing knight e7, for example rook here, because they want to push. And then in many positions you will also just play your own knight to e4, because that's probably the best way of stopping them. If you just put your knight in here, they cannot push it. And if they capture, of course, you get this pawn here, and then you can support it with pawn to f5. You can also support it with knight to f6, so that's not a good move on black's part. So we're going to play this, and then, for example, here just rook here. And as soon as you start running out of moves, usually it's time to go for this c5 push. You can also play your knight here to f6, or you could have also gone, for example, for c5 move, and then if they take, you take with the knight, and that also helps you to attack this bishop again and also protect your own knight. And then for the other moves, I'm just going to make a move for white, for example b3. You always want to play something like queen e7. Of course, in this specific line, you would probably capture this first. And in many lines, you want to play something like queen e7, and then you have these two files for your rooks. And that's just the main idea, pretty simple. And then I will show you the queen c2 line. So here, white is going to defend with the queen instead of the bishop, so we're going to use the queen. And the queen is a tricky move because it both defends the knight, but also it defends this e4 square. So if you were to just castle, white could always push this, and if you, for example, I will show you, and even if you capture, they can recapture like this, and that's not what you want to get. So always be careful that they cannot push this e4 pawn. So here we just play d5. We have more grip on this. They will not be able to push. So for example, e3, castles, bishop in. They are putting some pressure here, but it doesn't really matter. And against this variation, I really love this small trick with pawn takes. As soon as they move the bishop, you take with the pawn, you force them to make another move. And now the bishop is also gone, and this is no longer a good move. Here we have b6. And you could say, well, white can actually play pawn to e4 here, but then they have this giant weakness on d4, which we can just capture because their queen is no longer on this file. So pushing is not possible. We're gonna play b6. So the push doesn't work. So maybe they will play something like knight f3. And then again, we have the bishop here aiming at this square. And we have the same plans for the future as well. For example, if they castle, we can play the knight here. We can play pawn, c5, and then the same system. So you don't need to know any theory. You just always play this. Then another variation. If they play a3, it's a little bit annoying because your bishop is immediately challenged. You can just capture the knight. But this position is actually decent for white because they have more chances of trading and then pushing the other pawn over there. But it's not a problem. This is also a good variation for black. Here you can castle. I mean, you don't need to play d5 because there's no threat of pushing this. So d5. And then here you can play d5. They are trying to get more grip, but they still can't push it. So there's a lot of time. We're going to play this. They have no chance to push this. Maybe they will capture. Doesn't really matter. Now we're going to play the rook out so we can protect this square as well. And here they will try to really enforce their grip over this pawn. But that's not really a problem. We can play knight here to d7. Of course, this push doesn't work because we have a pawn that is protected by all three of these pieces. So just the main idea, always stop this push. Maybe they will try something like the rook, and then you just put the knight there, and now there is no more push. And of course, in the future, there are possible knight f6s and c5s, putting the rook over here. So it's always this same plan that we're going to play with black. Then this line is a little bit tricky, but you don't see it a lot online. You do see it a lot at the grandmaster level. That is this move f3. So they play f3 because they want to push e4 early on and have it be protected by the f-pawn. You just have to keep in mind that you want to counter this. So immediately play d5 so that you can counter this. They might challenge your bishop, but still here we have two pieces controlling e4, so this push is not possible. So you can castle. They might capture, but again, the push is not possible because we still have two pieces. So they will have to play something like e3 and do a more slow build-up in this variation. And then another trick I like here is b6. Usually you play bishop b7, which you can play in this variation. But against pawn f3, a nice trick to know is this bishop a6 move. So they move their bishop, I play bishop a6, immediately challenging them. Of course, if they make a random move, you can always just eliminate their bishop. And now that's a good trade because our bishop is usually a bit worse than theirs is. And then if they capture you, you don't really mind, you just take with the knight. This also helps for a c5 push in the future. And if they play something smart like queen d3, you can just go back with the knight. And that's perfectly fine. We're just going to go here and then play there. So that's not a problem. So that's a good move. Also just a bishop here to b7 is also a good move that you can play. So I'm going to say this variation, for example, here we play the rook, we play the knight, and then again the c5 push, and we are going to use both of our rooks. And here you want to play something like queen c7, you can also play queen e7, but this might become an open file in the future and you don't want to have your queen facing off this rook. So also not that complicated, just always keep in mind to fight for this e4 square. And then the last variation is what to do if they play an early knight f3. So some players will not play their knight here because they know that we are going for the spin. So what can you do then? Well, we can play d5 just to attack the center. And I'm kind of baiting here. I'm trying to bait them into playing knight c3 because then I have this variation that I love to play. If they don't play it, I will just give a check. Many players will put the knight here and then you have these same lines as we have seen before. If they don't and they put the knight here, for example, doesn't really matter, it's the same if it's here or here, we're gonna pin it and even capture it in the future. Maybe they can play this bishop here, but I would say just take and then you can castle. There's no threat of them pushing because we still have two defenders. This doesn't work. So yeah, they have to find something else, maybe something like bishop d3. But again, here we can do the small trick. Because here, if we were to play something like b6, they can actually try to push. So I would do the small trick just to have them waste the move and then play something like b6. Here e4 is possible, but this is not able to capture because of the pawn. This is not able to capture, but this is also a variation that you can play. Here you can play something like bishop b7 and then this is under attack, they will have to move it, and you can play knight here. And that's also fine, because they didn't really achieve their goals. But you have to be careful here, you cannot take this pawn. So yeah, those are the variations against knight f3. They can also castle, at which point we're going to play bishop here. And then, just as in many variations, if you want, you can always drop a knight in there and just have it stand there, because even if they trade, we get the bishop here, and there's no way for them to get this pawn push. So that is another interesting variation. So the key thing you have to keep in mind for this opening is you don't need to know the theory, but you do have to always fight against this e4 push. And if you just do that with all of your moves, your first 10 moves are going to be really easy, and you're going to have a nice equal position, or maybe even a slightly better position, so that you can continue into the middle game. A quick plug: if you are someone who plays online a lot and you want to improve at chess and join our community, check out the first link in the description. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!